Hello and welcome to Trad Jazz Today. Dan Zeilinger has been a world-traveling trad jazz musician for the past 40 years. Some of his most memorable performances were on the lawn of the Edinburgh Castle, at the Imperial Palace in Japan, as well as TV shows and commercials around the world. Dan has met many people during his career and has spent many hours on and off stage with these musicians, talking about jazz, life, and more. Some are touring musicians, some are theme park warriors, and some are casual musicians who play on weekends with their friends. They all have stories worthy of a movie script, and through these interviews, Dan will be sharing them with you. Now, Dan Zeilinger.
Hi there, this is Dan Zeilinger with Trad Jazz Today. My next guest, in a very strange way, is a very old friend. I know that sounds a little confusing, but we met back in the 70s when he was living in Pasadena, and we've crossed paths since then, I believe, several times at festivals. And he's just a wonderful multi-instrumentalist, Mr. Ted DePlant. Hey, Ted.
Hi, how you doing?
It hurts when I do this. I'm doing fine. It's good to see you. And I kind of stepped off the festival circuit for the past 10 or 20 years.
Yeah.
So I kind of disappeared out of sight. But no, I was going to explain to you I think it was 73 or 74. Larry Wright had a gig at South Coast Village in Costa Mesa. I don't know if you remember that gig.
I may have.
But I believe you were booked on tuba at the time,
Mm-hmm.
in the early 70s. And the personnel was Dan Barrett and Brian Shaw and Tom Kubis on reeds. And I think Larry Wright was playing banjo. And you didn't show up.
I didn't.
And I hadn't played a note of Dixieland in my life. Or whoever was supposed to play tuba, I think it was you or Beaumont, but I'm pretty sure it was you.
Maybe, yeah.
And they looked down at me. I was on the lawn with my girlfriend. And Dan and Brian go, Dan, go back to school and get your tuba. I was going to go to Orange Coast College. And that was the beginning for me. So whoever that was who didn't show up was...
Well, that might be why I don't remember that gig, because there. I don't know. Actually, I usually show up for everything that I'm booked for.
I believe you. So maybe it was Jeff. I don't know. I still play with Jeff Beaumont, by the way.
Really? Wow. I haven't seen him in a long time either.
On occasion.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's good to see you. Let's start with, now, were you born in Pasadena?
No, I was born in San Diego in 1947.
Well, that's not my fault. Okay, great. And when did you migrate?
That was probably during the early 50s with my folks.
Now, you must have started playing music before then.
Well, I saw it was my grandfather who played banjo, and a cousin named Hank Hinshaw who played trombone, and they had friends and had jam sessions over at Hank's place. And I was a kid, but I was really enthralled by the whole thing. And then I started playing. Actually, my first instrument at that time was drums, and still do once in a while. And then after that was tuba. Actually, I tried to play trumpet, and I never was a very good trumpet player. So although
sometimes our faces don't work with all of those, you know.
Yeah, that's true, unfortunately. But I actually had recorded examples mainly out of some sort of masochism or something that had me playing trumpet, because I never thought I was much of a trumpet player. But anyway, moving right along. Yeah, I did play tuba.
But you started on drums. When was your first chance to play with a band?
That was probably at one of these Sunday social jazz societies. Aside from the occasional jam sessions at my cousin's house, because it's like a second cousin. Unfortunately, almost everybody's passed on by now. But,
yeah. Well, it's kind of the age we're at, isn't it? You know,
mm-hmm.
It's I talked to my daughter about that the other day. You know, I said, you guys have all these friends to talk to, and not me. I can still talk to them, but they don't listen very well. And so then you migrated up to Pasadena, or up
Yeah.
to the dark recesses of LA County.
Yes. Yeah. hmm
Now, was that by yourself, or that was the whole family?
Well, it was initially with my family, but then I moved on and I went into the army and came back. Actually, I started playing in bands in Germany
Ah,
before I came back. That was in the late 60s. I was playing in bands. There was a band called Pinky's Courthouse Gang. This is in Munich.
now, were you in
And,
the army band also?
no,
Okay.
I was pretty much a self-taught musician on just about everything. I take that back. I did have some legitimate piano lessons when I was about 8 years old, but I
Just
stupidly,
enough to screw you up. I got
yeah, that's about it.
it. Okay, tell me more about the German bands.
Okay, well, there was Pinky's Courthouse Gang. The leader had red hair. His name was Frank Weiss, but he had red hair, and so I called him Pinky. And that was the most traditional band. There were a lot of other bands that were based on the kind of Euro trad thing, like Chris Barber and Papa Boo and
Right.
some of the stuff. That was very popular then.
Nat Granella, those guys.
Mhm. Anyway, and I did play mainly drums at that time in groups like that. And then actually, well, technically, the tuba player in Pinky's Courthouse Gang had to leave for some reason, and I wound up playing tuba for a little while. But as soon as he came back, I went back to playing drums. And then when I came back to the States, I was basically playing some drums. And so, of course, all this time, I had never totally quit playing piano, although my piano playing, it improved over a period of time, but it took several years. So anyway, and I did play in various bands, various versions of the Down Home Jazz Band, which was Hal Smith on
Right.
drum. And it was his band. And actually, my very first records, I played tuba on a Down Home Jazz Band record.
Yeah.
And with Dan Barrett too was on that.
Yeah, I think wasn't Larry Wright also?
Yes, that's right. Larry Wright.
Yeah, I actually kind of looked at some of the earlier album covers online and saw what you guys were doing. Yeah, I mean, I didn't meet those guys until about 73. And then Dan kidnapped me and played me, Big St. Louis in my ear for about 4 days. And that was the end of my classical trumpet career at the time. So what can I say? Okay, so how long were you in Southern California playing around with the guys?
Let me see. Up until about 1977 or 76, because I moved up to Portland, Oregon to start a business, which was a big mistake, and I lost my tail on that. But however, the good part of it was that I met Don Kinch, who's a trumpet player, had played with Turk Murphy, and had played with other very good trumpet player and bass player. And I wound up playing in his band for a couple of years, and actually played at the very first jazz festival I played piano on. This is also my debut on piano, was playing with his band at a festival in St. Louis, the St. Louis Ragtime Festival in 1977, which I mentioned that because I just ran across some old cassette tapes of that. And not only are the fidelity almost pretty good, it was really something to hear me from that long ago playing with this band. And it was a good band. Chris Tile was with that band also.
Okay.
That was a big band.
People always look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them that the Portland area is actually a hotbed for trad jazz.
Well, it was.
It was still more so than a lot of cities.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know a lot of guys up there still. But yeah, boy, you just named some names there with Chris Tile and those people. I know what I was going to ask you. So listening to yourself from that time, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this.
How loud was I?
Are the things about your playing that still manifest themselves with you that you hear?
Occasionally, I've gone through a lot of changes. I'm still basically a traditional player based mainly within the stride style. But at that time, I was a lot more interested in Jelly Roll Morton, and that hasn't totally gone away, you know. So I still have insert Jelly Roll Morton licks, but there was a lot more of that then, and I was a lot more primitive then, I have to admit.
Are you telling me your left hand is locked in octaves? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, no, actually, I can do tenths. Stretch them out, tenths.
Oh, now we're showing off.
Yeah, but anyway. And in the meantime, for a long time, for almost 30 years, I didn't touch a tuba. So if you look behind me, I think you can see.
I see the bell.
Yeah.
Is that like a recording con or?
Yes, it is. It was formerly owned by Vince Giordano, who's a very good player in New York. And I also understand it had been used by the tuba player in Guy Lombardo's orchestra way back then. Anyway, it's a good horn, and I still play it once in a while.
Well, one thing I'd really like to get a hold of is one of those stand-up tubas.
Yeah, well,
I think those are just crazy looking.
Oh, you mean the long one, the one that's
Right.
6 feet tall? Well, I don't think there were too many of those. The last time I saw one of those is a program, one of the Tonight shows. This is a long time ago. That the Sugar Blues guy, the trumpet player, Clyde McCoy,
Right.
he had a tuba player on that, and the guy had one of those. You know, and but that's the last time I ever saw one of those. And I asked Vince Giordano about that, and he said he had played one, but he didn't have one either.
Yeah, I've never seen one in person myself.
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Well, cool. So you hadn't touched a tuba in 30 years, and you got called for a job, or?
Well, this is actually this is jumping forward a long time. In Dayton, Ohio, there's a group that I played mainly piano with for several years, Dave Greer and his classic jazz band. They needed a tuba player. I had just recently stopped playing piano with them because it was a long ways to drive up there. And still on good terms with everybody. And I wound up, they needed a tuba player as a sub, so I started playing. And then later on, Dave decided he wanted to try to book a quartet with me on tuba instead of the string bass and whatever else he had.
A wise man.
Yeah, well, that didn't work out because COVID popped in, and then all jobs popped out.
Yeah. Well, let's back up all the way to back to Portland. How long were you in that area?
I was there for 3 years, about as long enough for my business to go belly up. And also for a variety of reasons, Don's band lost their main job, and then that didn't have much else going on, and it just kind of petered away. So I moved from Portland to Cincinnati.
That's a little bit of a culture shock there.
Yeah. Well, the reason I did that is I'm having little to do in Portland, and Hal Smith at that time, the drummer, excellent drummer.
Sure, I've interviewed him actually.
The best traditional drummer I've ever worked with. Anyway, he was at that time living in Cincinnati, and said, "There's plenty of work here. Move here." And I said, well, what am I going to do? Am I going to lose my tail with a business that goes belly up, or if I'm going to lose my tail trying to be a professional musician? And so I decided, well, I'm going to try to be a professional musician. And it worked out for a long time. I was able to play with a lot of bands. I mean, some people here, there were a couple of clubs that I played in. One of them is still in existence, called Arnold's Bar and Grill. And played there for a long time, from the time I arrived in very late 1980 to until just about 4 or 5 years ago, when it changed hands and I was no longer there. But with a variety of bands, I oftentimes played there 2 or 3 days a week. And then there was another club called the De Felice Cafe in Covington, Kentucky, which, if anybody is familiar, is directly across the Ohio River from Cincinnati, so it's not really a big distance far away. And I played there for a long time with a different band. And I was thinking all the different kinds of bands. I played with real bands to more swing-oriented groups. In order to be a professional musician, you have to kind of be able to work with a variety of things and be aware of it and cognizant. So that's what I did there.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that job ended too with the passing of Guy Felice, and I was the leader there for a while, but they changed their hands, and then they changed their they just changed everything.
Yeah.
It was a good job though while it lasted.
Yeah, I think Hal's a good example of somebody who can alter their style in order to keep money coming across the table,
Mm-hmm.
Although he is the best traditional drummer.
That's Hal Smith. Yeah.
Hal Smith. Of course, he's also interested in country swing and
Mm-hmm.
and just straight ahead swing. Well, not bebop, but big band swing. And so he's very flexible. Although if you talk to the majority of the musicians that know him, they swear that he wouldn't play anything but trad. But it's not true. We play whatever pays us is what we do.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
That's
true. Yeah. Unfortunately, the last 2 or 3 years, there haven't been many people that wanted to pay me. It's COVID. I blame COVID for it because it's just jobs have not been there.
Well, when was the last time our paths crossed? Do you remember?
I believe it was at a festival where I was playing drums with Tex Wyndham's band, and his tuba player had to be gone for some reason. It was at his sister's, Oregon.
Okay. I remember the job. I just didn't remember the location.
Yeah, and you sat in, and it was really, really good. And I okay, this might sound like an easy thing for me to do, but you are an excellent tuba player. I really thought you were.
Well, please, you compliment me. No,
well, I do.
I appreciate it, and sitting in with that band in particular was a kick because of his little card system.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that
yeah, he likes to direct and.
Now, one of the interesting things that happened on that job is I was, of course, sitting in back next to you somewhere, and he looked at the audience and he said, "We're now going to play Home in Pasadena." He goes, "I'll bet you nobody in this crowd can tell me who had the hit on that." And from in back, I said, "That's Temperance 7," and he spun around and he said, "That, ladies and gentlemen, is a scholar." And the only reason I knew that was because of Rusty Stiers and Brad Roth were big Temperance 7 fans, and I worked with them for a long time in Knott's Berry Farm. Yeah. And so that's the only reason I knew that. I'm not anywhere near a scholar or have the kind of chops that Tex does in history, but it impressed him enough to make a imprint,
Yeah, well, I don't know Rusty too well, but I have talked to Brad in the past many years. Again, he's a really good banjo guitar player. I mean, really good.
I think one of the best.
Nice guy.
You really need to get a chance. I don't know if you spend any time online at all, but you should really check out my YouTube channel. It's called Trad Jazz Today, and you have a ton of friends that I've interviewed. I've interviewed over 105 people now, and that includes Hal Smith and Dan Barrett and all kinds of people and Larry Wright, and it's just so much fun. And one of the things that happened because of this show that I wasn't expecting is those people started connecting with each other. They would see my interview with them and say, "Oh, that was nice of him to mention me. and give him a call." And so that's kind of cool. Something above and beyond my intention with this show ended up happening really nicely. I've had over 10,000 views so far. So
wow.
Who would thought with traditional jazz,
Well, there still is an audience somewhere for that, and I don't know. I'm hoping so. I got to tell you, one thing I've done to kind of document my career, such as it is, I had produced a series of recordings, which they're available on.
It's your
on
TDP label, correct?
well, yeah. Put a very brief plug. If they want, people are interested in listening to any of these tunes in any of the styles, they're all available on through Bandcamp, which is one of the streaming sites, and you can get individual titles or the whole album or anything as you wish on that, or you can just listen to them and you don't have to buy them. But I have these things that are, I have 3 volumes that are document my career basically in the lesser known bands that I played with.
And some of the lesser known tunes, I would imagine.
Well, some of them are, some of them aren't. Like, you know, some are well-known tunes like Old Man River, you know, Old Rugged Cross, some other things, some other really unusual tunes, like the theme from Midsummer Murders, which is an English television show, but I turned it into a stride piece. And there's a bunch of other stuff, a variety of bands and stuff. And I also, and I will get away from my commercial thing here for a second, in a second. These are also.
I'm actually going to give you some time at the end of this interview to plug some more. So,
okay.
You're welcome.
We'll do this later. This is other bands that I played with that either they were never issued to begin with, or they may not be available. Some were released only on LPs back in the 70s or the 80s, and that's it. But anyway, continue.
No, well, this channel's not good for anything if the people who are interviewed don't benefit from it, you know?
Yeah.
So that's fine with me. I do have a kind of a general question for you, which is, how do you feel between the difference of recreating old recordings and playing in the style of old recordings?
I'd prefer to play in the style of old recordings. I don't think it's very satisfying for me. It's not really very creative to replicate an old recording, you know. Sometimes there are parts of old recordings that I say, hey, that is really good, but I don't want to do the whole thing. So I might use that little part from an original recording, but in my arrangements, but most of the time it's going to sound like an original interpretation of something in that style.
Yeah, I agree with you. But also there's nothing more joyous than to be on a pickup job, to be on a casual gig, and all of a sudden everybody dials into the same lick from some obscure recording, and you see this light go off in their eyes, and everybody quotes the same lick. That kind of thing I really, really like.
I've done it.
Oh yeah, it's the moments we chase.
Yeah, it reminds me of a session that actually turned out to be digitally recorded by Leon Oakley, who is his home. He's the cornet player on there, with he and Bob Helm and myself, just a trio. And we were playing a tune called Papa Dee Da Da, which is
sure.
But anyway, you know, that was all we said was, what key are we going to play it in? And okay, tempo. All right, there we go. And it wound up things from the 1926 or 1924 Louis Armstrong and Clarence Williams recording popped up during our improvised thing, including the ending, you know, which is that kind of a tricky ending, but it just happened, you know. We weren't consciously saying, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. This is a thought out ahead arrangement. It was all just things that happened. That's what you were talking about.
Yeah, pretty. Yeah, in fact, when I was playing with the Misbehaving Jazz Band, Brian Shaw brought that arrangement in, or that tune in, and so I know exactly what you're talking about. That if you don't know that ending is coming, you can be left high and dry.
Yeah, it's a thing for those who are listening who don't know. At the end, it goes da 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 bump. And if you're not aware that that's going to happen, it's like, huh?
Sounds like somebody lifted the needle off the record, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool.
Yeah, I saw you with the Misbehaving Band. That was a good band. Some fellow named Christopher on
Some unknown clarinet player.
Yeah. Oh man, that was terrific. And Brian was great. You had a good trombone player too that unfortunately had to
Chuck
leave.
Anderson,
Mhm.
probably. He was actually off of the Harry James band.
Mhm. He was very good. And yeah, in fact, that whole band was very good.
We had Brad on banjo, Brad Roth.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was a good band.
There was another occasion at, I don't know if it was, I don't think it was that festival. It might have been some other festival where I sat in on piano for one set with the Misbehaving Jazz Band.
No, I don't remember that.
Yeah, well,
Well, that's what we normally
forget.
We started with Bill Mitchell on piano
Well,
at the very beginning of that band, and I guess they decided to slim it down, and after the first year or so, we just dropped the piano.
Yeah, I still have the CD of that band.
Well,
I enjoy.
Go ahead. It was a fun band.
Yeah.
But what happens when you get guys like Evan and Brian all in the same, and Brad all in the same band, it's hard to make it cohesive for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's so volatile, creatively and personality wise.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just trying to hold things together.
Yeah, you did okay.
The only reason I play this style at all is because of Dan Barrett and Brian Shaw introduced me to it in college.
Mm-hmm.
And so good for them, that Southern Comfort band that they were all in. I was the trumpet player for that. And I sort of just rode coattails,
Mm-hmm.
But thank you for compliments.
Yeah. You mentioned Larry Wright. He was one of the clever, funny people that I've ever worked with, both musically and as a person himself. He was great to be around because he's so funny sometimes.
Oh, and his imagination shows up in his playing, which is even more delightful. Now, he's actually done 2 interviews with me, because in the first interview, he started naming the bands that he's been in for more than 2 weeks. And he wanted to name all of them and give them all credit. And there were 48 more bands that he's been in and out of. And so we took up a good 3 hours of interview time together.
Mm-hmm. He's done several recordings with me, with my groups, specifically the Washboard Wizards was the name of the group that recorded several albums for Stomp Off Records. And he was on that until he had a physical problem. He had to leave, but he was on a lot of those, and as well as the Down Home Jazz Band way back when I first started.
Yeah, I've got to make sure to look up some of those because I don't think I've ever heard Hal on Washboard before.
Well, he's a very musical. It's not like a silly novelty instrument in his hands. It really makes sense. Of course, he doesn't do bells and whistles and bell horns and all that stuff. He just plays the beat and does some little licks and stuff that are actually kind of subtle, but they work very well in a group.
Yeah, Bob Raggio played that way.
Yeah.
And played well. I've also interviewed Ralph Reynolds, who's just a tiny bit more flashy. I'm kidding.
Well, he's a show guy.
Oh, he's great.
Oh, he is. It's very entertaining. That group was very entertaining too. I never worked with them, but Ralph's really good. But Hal also on some of the later Washboard Wizards, I couldn't keep a guy who's one of the best drummers around from playing drums on all these things. So he does play drums part of the time on several of the Washboard Wizards CDs. Yeah,
a guy who's up and coming. I don't know if you've heard Riley Baker, Chet Baker's son.
No, I haven't heard him.
Oh, he plays both bass and drums, and is just right in the pocket. He's just really wonderful.
Yeah, he's got a daughter that's into the old music too.
Oh yeah, he's no slouch.
Yeah. It's like reading the syncopated times that keep up on what's happening with all these different people. That's the only big newspaper now that deals with these traditional players. And Clint's daughter was a front page article not 2 or 3 months ago.
Yeah, I was really surprised when they approached me about being on the radio, Syncopated Times radio show. My interviews are being carried on the Syncopated Times radio show on Tuesdays.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really surprised when those guys called me and wanted the addition of my banter on their. It's primarily a music station, and but oh well, who knows where this thing's going to lead.
You never know.
Oh,
I think I never know. I feel at my age, I'm getting up there now. I'm in my 70s. That I'm wondering if the career is over, or if there's just in a lull right now and things will pick up again, or who knows. But
well, it depends on what bands you're in or what bands you call. I don't know if you've generated your own bands while you're up there. I have to admit, I'm not. I haven't been stalking your Facebook or anything, so I really don't know what your current or your pre-COVID gigs were like, or what bands you were playing with.
Well, unfortunately, I've had a lot of people either retire or pass on, or some of them have just want to play in a more contemporary style. I have a couple of very good friends, reed players, who are like, one of them wants to be the guy. He wants to be the guy who played on Take 5 with Brubeck.
Yeah, I'll get you and I.
Who's passed on also, or another guy that wants to be Charlie Parker. But we all get along real well, and we do play together. But I don't know if it really is. It really sounds good all together.
No, it's true. In fact, playing. I'm sure you've had the same experience. Every so often, you'll get a just out of college kid or somebody who thinks they want to dip their toes in the trad pool, and it's really difficult for people who go through the contemporary jazz education systems, and all of a sudden they're told not to play anything any more exotic than a six.
Yeah, and little things like keeping time, and also just knowing your basic repertoire. I played this one time. This guy, my regular bass player, had to leave for some reason for one night, and he hired this guy from the college, from the Cincinnati College Music Department, and the guy he's supposedly very good. Anyway, the guy showed up, and he didn't know any tunes, and his ears weren't good enough to be able to just play and hear it and play it. And I remember specifically, I said, okay, now our next tune is going to be "Oh Lady Be Good" by George Gershwin, a very standard tune.
Oh yeah,
standard tune.
Even for the beboppers.
And this guy was, what's that? Oh, let me write down. What are the chords? And I was like, and we're in front of an audience. It's time to play. We're playing, and just try to hold. And then that was a strain that whole evening. But I know that's what I'm talking about, though, that a lot of these supposedly well-educated people from the colleges, they really don't know anything.
Well, boy, you got me on a subject. I'm also an educator. I retired this time last year for who knows what reason. And I would always make it a chance to teach kids how to at least play out of a fake book. That sort of is a starting point, and not be so strict about arrangements and things, and teach them how to improvise and find the lines and tell them what the lines are supposed to be. And but you don't get that, and not even at the college level. Part of the problem is a lot of high school directors and even college directors are not jazz people. They're teaching jazz classes, and they're opening up a book, and they're telling their kids, this is learn every 2-5-1 change, and listen to the old stuff like Charlie Parker and Dizzy Gillespie, and No doubt.
There's nothing wrong with them, but there was so much more before them that's worthwhile, you know.
Well, it's just foundational. It's
Yeah.
like kind of running the Olympics without ever learning how to walk, as far as I'm concerned. But that's just me. Let's talk on another hot button subject here when it comes to
Okay.
jazz. I think that electronic metronomes have ruined music.
Well, that's possible. Yeah, I could see why. Because a lot of things we were talking earlier about Evan Christopher.
Yes.
There's this one album that he did on in recent years, and he had I won't even name the guy because it does him a disservice to name this wonderful, wonderful piano player
Sure.
who's one of the best in the world, was on this, and he sounded out of place because the bass player and the drummer were playing in that rock metronome style rhythm, more of a rhythm and blues. There was no swing involved in what they were playing, and it didn't help Evan very much, and it really didn't help that piano player. And the guys, I said, the piano player is one of the very best in the world.
Sure.
Yeah, I should point out, and I will say this only briefly, is that I know that I'm not even close to being one of the best piano players in the world. There's so many other great piano players around now that I feel I'm just lucky to have gigs sometimes. I can play adequately sometimes, most of the time. But
well, if every gig we were playing was a dance, I would say there's some validity in having perfect metronomic time. But I think it takes away the nuance of emotion and of everything of just the rises and lows that naturally occur with tempo when the feeling of the piece changes.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of. You didn't hurt Bach and Beethoven not to have strict metronomic time.
Well, I've heard of the term flex time, which
like in the Vienna waltzes, you mean?
I have some problems with some of that because it does, things don't sound continuous if they really slow down or speed up unnaturally, but that's my opinion.
Yeah, I'm just yakking, you know what?
Yeah, well, of course.
That's what I do. Well, that's great. I'm so glad that you agreed to do this. You've been in my memory bank since the 70s. And
well, I'm sorry we finally got together on this.
And we've only had a couple chances to play together, and it's always been a joy when we do. But what can I say? So, do you think there are going to be any more records with the washboard guys? Or
well, I think that is done. We did, I think, 7 or 8 with those. First Stomp Off, we never played a gig in person. It was only strictly a recording session band, and we existed for close to 20 years. And everybody's so scattered now. In Southern California, in Northern California, and other places. I'm trying to do something in that idiom, sort of, one more time with a band that I'm trying to put together with people from Chicago. And there really isn't anybody right here now other than myself that are very knowledgeable of the earlier styles. And I'm trying to put that together in the meantime.
Now, we had talked about your TDP label where you're releasing some of your old recordings. How can people get a hold of those or have a listen? Or
okay, well, basically, all of them are available through Bandcamp, which is a streaming service that you just put Ted Diplant at Bandcamp, and then it'll come up. It'll show you the albums that I have available, and also you can find out by clicking on each one the tunes that are on each one, and you can listen to them. You don't have to buy them. If you really like them and buy them, I wouldn't mind it if you bought them, but. What I really did it is just basically, this is me, this is what I've done in my life, and it's there for, I hope somebody can appreciate that, appreciate it. And so, and I may do another, as I said, I did three CDs of compilation things with bands that I either put together or played one or two times with. It just happened to be decently recorded. And I think they're okay to listen to. And some of them are well-known bands, like the Jim Cullum Jazz Band. I played with them on 2-week periods that John Sheridan, their excellent pianist, had to be gone, and I subbed for him for a week at a time, twice. And at one time, the recordings came out. There were some really, hot stuff. So that's included on these recordings of myself with various groups. And as I said, I'm not trying to promote myself as the great pianist, but everybody, in fact, it's mainly to feature other people that I think are worthy of being heard on these deals. But also I've done, put out 4 albums, of one of which was with Frank Powers, Hot 4. Frank Powers was a local clarinet player who was his clarinet style is based on Pee Wee Russell, and his tenor saxophone playing was more like Bud Freeman.
Sure.
And with some Lester Young in there too. It was an interesting combination. And we had a gig for almost 10 years at this place called Arnold's that I mentioned earlier. And a lot of it, I recorded it. Mainly it was just recordings to listen to and to try to, I could do that better. I could do that. They weren't really meant to be heard by anybody, but then after years and years, I pulled them out, and some of these students, hey, that's pretty good. So I put a CD of that out. I put a CD out of Chicago Rhythm, which is a group that I played with that actually did some commercial recordings during the 80s, all on LP.
Now, who was in that group?
That was John Otto on clarinet and saxophone, Frank Powers on clarinet and tenor sax, Jack Mylan, who's unfortunately passed on, an excellent rhythm banjo player, myself on piano, Hal Smith on drums, and either Louise Anderson on tuba, and she had to move on, and we replaced her with Vince Giordano, who's a pretty good guy. Plays every bass instrument, and he's a good guy too. I like working with him. But anyway, we did, that was during the 80s. And also for a while, we added Bob Neighbor on trumpet, who's an excellent trumpet player.
Excellent.
We did commercial recordings with that group, but these all things are on this, were recorded in decent fidelity by somebody who was at a couple of the festivals we were at. So that's where those come from. And then there's a couple of the Stomp Off records that I did that were only put out on LP at the time. One with the great Swedish trumpet player Bent Persson, and another one of the very first Washboard Wizards record. And the one with Bent Persson, I was able to put some extra tunes on the CD that didn't make it onto the LP because of space. So anyway, that was that. But they're there. I said they're available through Bandcamp. They're also available through me if anybody wants to mail to me, which I hesitate to give my address on this. But anyway, I recommend going through Bandcamp. That should be the best choice for the listener, because you can pick what you want to hear. There's a couple of things from the D. Felice band, which was called the D. Felice Sleep Cat Band, which did one album on GHB, or Jazzology, which was, I thought, very good. But a couple of tunes on my thing recorded at a concert someplace. And anyway, it's a big variety of stuff. And I would recommend it. And if anybody wants to hear any of this, listen to, look it up on Bandcamp. And just take your pick if you won't find something you really like and want to have in your collection. Okay, but anyway.
No, that's great. Just to let you know, this isn't, it is a plug for me. I have another YouTube channel, which is just Daniel E. Zeilinger. And it has a bunch of stuff I've done, some cuts from First Federal Jazz Band and Misbehavin' and 10th Avenue and some of the bands I've been in. Of course, you have to like 4/4 tuba to listen to me, but what can I say?
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that.
Well,
I'll have to do that way. Misbehaving jazz band.
yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah, I've got some Misbehaving cuts on there too. So that's great. Ted, thank you so much for doing this. There are still a few people from this era that I'd like to get a hold of and interview. One being Steve Resnick.
Oh, I ran into him a few years ago. He's still playing banjo and piano.
I sent him an email, and so I'm looking for that. What can I? I'm out hunting for people to interview all the time. So if you have any people that you think should be interviewed, have them get a hold of me at my Trad Jazz Today email.
Yeah, okay. I remember you did mention, incidentally, and I know you have interviewed Dan Barrett, but he's the big success story. He's a fine musician, and he plays any kind of style. He can play, if you wanted him to, asked him to play like Kid Ory.
Yeah.
You want him to play like some way modern guy, he can do that too. And he's good at it all, and he's a good guy. So
yeah, it was really neat to see. I was doing a Steady Friday pre-COVID with just a kicks band at a local restaurant in Signal Hill, and he and Brian and their families came down to see it. So I got to see Brian and Dan and Laura and all the Susan and even Andy Barrett came down.
No,
so it was good to see all those guys.
Yeah. There's some good players here. I will see if I can contact this guy named Andy Shum here, who's a really good trumpet player, who plays cornet and all the reed instruments. He's an excellent piano player too.
Yeah, I would love to interview anybody that you think would be a good interview.
Okay, I would think he would be.
Well, I appreciate that. And all they have to do is send me a little note to tradjazztoday@gmail.com, and under the caption, just like you did, schedule me.
Yeah, which incidentally, I apologize for my delay in getting back to you. I've just had things pop up.
People have lives, and my poor son, who is actually kind of the producer, scheduler for the shows. This was his idea, and he is a full-time band director at high school. He's got a youth group. He's the director of a drum and bugle corps. He's got a family, and he's still trying to fit his old man's thing in the middle of all of this. So kudos to Aaron.
Yeah.
But, I think we're doing okay. So don't worry about the delay.
He's right there off camera. Thanks, Aaron.
Actually, now he's in the next room.
Oh, okay. Well, he's off camera anyway. So anyway.
Yeah, but he's a great guy. All right, sir. You take care. And I hope our paths cross again.
Yes, I hope soon. A lot sooner than this last time.
Well, I'm going to need that to be soon. So what can I do? All right, sir. You take care.
Thank you for watching Trad Jazz Today. Dan posts new interviews every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Make sure to check out the archive of past shows, and please give us a thumbs up when you subscribe to the channel. Bye.